morning and welcome to Morning Movie News. Today happens to be my mom's birthday, so I've come in early to shoot this episode, but then I'm taking the rest of the day off to spend it with her. So I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to dedicate the first segment of today's show to kind of like a movie math light, because how can we not talk about the 4th of July weekend box office? Because it's chock full of headlines, and it's arguable what is the bigger headline, the resounding success of Despicable Me 2 or the resounding failure of The Lone Ranger. I guess let's start with the number one movie of the weekend, Despicable Me 2. What a huge success. There was a quote coming out of Universal behind the scenes from the Suits saying we were standing there watching Rentrack, and Rentrack is the company that reports box office numbers for the industry. They said we were watching the returns from Rentrack and we were thinking to ourselves, is this actually happening? Is this true? They were just standing there in disbelief, like in those movies when they watch like the stock ticker. And you know what? It was true. It was a wonderful 4th of July gift, apparently not just for moviegoers but for Universal as well, as everyone flocked to see this movie. And Despicable Me 2 is performing, they're saying, on the level of like something like Toy Story 3, Shrek 4, Ice Age 4, even just in its second, the second movie of the franchise, it's already on par with those other franchises. That's just incredible. And I was at the movies myself this weekend, and I was just completely caught off guard and amazed and impressed with how many people were pouring out of the theaters for Despicable Me 2. We're talking all ages, from little children, which is great because I sometimes feel that adults are reluctant to take very small children to movies because they feel they can just see stuff on DVD, to adults going without children. So that was really impressive. But it doesn't just stop there with the impressiveness of Despicable Me 2. It was also reported that throughout the weekend, Despicable Me 1 was the number one download and purchase on iTunes, Amazon. Also, Minion Madness was doing very well, which is a collection of Minion shorts. That was a huge demand on these streaming sites. And also, in terms of like DVD purchases, not only was the first film doing so well, but the pre-orders for Despicable Me 2 on DVD were already in the top 10. So people apparently went to see the movie, were so happy, they came home and ordered it already in advance. So I guess with those mega tickets, maybe people would have purchased the mega tickets for Despicable Me 2. Because you know we've been talking about the fact that Pacific Rim is going to be offering one in Canada, a super ticket, where you get the digital download in the future as part of your ticket price. And also they tried to do that with World War Z. I guess they just picked the wrong movie. So Despicable Me 2, huge hit. It's just going to really make Illumination Entertainment flush with cash, and it makes NBC Universal just a huge player in the animation arena. So much so that I feel the other studios better watch out, because this is a kind of phenomenon that everybody obviously wants, and I feel that has been lacking a little bit from the Cineplexes this year. I'd say the biggest movies in terms of like all-out fan bases would have to be, based on what we're saying on the internet and everything like that, and the views. I think Iron Man 3 was the biggest. Followed, I think, Man of Steel was very big, World War Z was big, and then also now Despicable Me 2. These are just huge audience interest. And so it's great. I think, audiences become a little jaded recently, feeling that, we're told what we should like, and then we kind of we're not going to play along Hollywood. Speaking of not playing along, that's what happened to The Lone Ranger. This film just totally fell on its face this weekend. It even came in under what Disney was predicting, to try and manage expectations. By the way, Despicable Me 2 had opened with a little over 80 million for the 3-day weekend and 140 for the whole 5-day weekend. And then it did even more amazing worldwide. It's way past 200 million in its first weekend and opened at number 1 in most territories. As for The Lone Ranger, it opened with around, I have the numbers here, it opened with around 29 for the 3 days and about 50 for the 5-day weekend, and Disney had predicted 65. So it couldn't even make that, and some people were speculating over the weekend that the Heat might even beat it over the course of the 5-day weekend. It came very close. The Heat came in at 25 for the 3 days, so it was a squeaker. But some of you already called this in the comments, but it's definitely true. This is performing very similar to another Disney flop, The Prince of Persia. And I think it's interesting because I think both movies you have a case where a white actor was cast in a non-white role. You had Jake Gyllenhaal playing the Prince of Persia. I actually made quite a big deal at the time that movie came out that I felt it should have been an Iranian or Middle Eastern actor playing that role. And a lot of people didn't agree with me, but the movie didn't do very well. And, you can argue why that is, but I think, you can't argue that there's a correlation between Johnny Depp playing a Native American role and the same kind of fizzling at the box office. So I think that's very interesting. And I wonder if maybe, will Disney do this Disney and Jerry Bruckheimer, by the way, those are both Jerry Bruckheimer movies. Will they fall on their faces a third time, or will they maybe learn their lesson and see what they can do about maybe having a little more diversity in these films? But I liked The Lone Ranger. I mean, I felt it had problems, but overall I enjoyed the film. And a number of you did as well. I posted my own review yesterday, and a lot of you agreed and said, I had a good time. So it's interesting, so if you haven't seen The Lone Ranger, if you could write down below why you're not going, because this is just, and also I have to say, if I was Disney, I would be very worried about Pirates 5 at this point. I would wonder if there was a problem with The Lone Ranger just specifically, or if maybe people really were getting very tired of Johnny Depp. Because as I pointed out in the open for The Lone Ranger, that was the Pirates 4 was the lowest grossing Pirates movie in the United States. It was the biggest grossing overall because it did so well overseas, but I wouldn't expect The Lone Ranger to be saved by overseas box office because it's such an American story. Cowboy films and westerns don't play particularly well overseas. So The Lone Ranger is in a lot of trouble, and I feel bad for Armie Hammer because I like him a lot. I think he's a very good actor. I thought he was great in the role. So that's the box office basics. So let's go on to the second story of the day, something I thought was interesting. Marvel sure is pushing Guardians of the Galaxy. They this weekend, Stephen Wacker, an editor, I've met him. He's a really cool guy. I worked with him a little bit when I was at Marvel. He said that, I'm not gonna officially confirm or deny, but we might have been talking about Guardians of the Galaxy at the Animation Summit for Marvel. And he's like, wouldn't that be cool? Wouldn't you love to see an animated Guardians of the Galaxy show? And I guess, a character like Rocket Raccoon, a raccoon with a gun, would be perfect for animation. But at the same time, I think the Marvel, two things. I think they're betting awfully heavily on this idea that I feel is a huge gamble. I really still am not convinced that audiences are going to click with Guardians of the Galaxy. I even feel, from its B- level, I wouldn't even say B movie level director, James Gunn, to kind of like, it's B movie level casting. Hopefully I'll see a trailer and be like, oh, I'm sorry I ever doubted you, Marvel. But I'm still very nervous about it. And I feel even the comic is not that great. It has its moments, but I feel just the whole Guardians of the Galaxy push from Marvel just reeks of desperation, in my opinion. I feel that they're just shoving it down our throats. Talk about a studio trying to tell you what to like, and then they're just. I think they realize they've gambled so much, and so much is at stake with Guardians of the Galaxy because it's going to go, it's going to go into the Avengers 2. And it's a big tentpole picture for them, that they're just really trying to make sure that it succeeds. But I think they're actually working against themselves at this point. I don't know. How do you feel? Do you feel that you're having Guardians of the Galaxy, pushed down your throat, or are you like, give me more? I can't get enough of Guardians of the Galaxy. I don't know. A team with a rocket, a raccoon with a gun, a living tree. And also the Angela. Everyone's making such a big deal about Angela joining Guardians of the Galaxy. I have to tell you, as I said, I'm not so thrilled to have a female character that doesn't wear any clothing. But she does have some cool visual elements otherwise. I like her mask, and I like the big sash that she has always going around. But, Angela, I appreciate that she came from Spawn, and it's a big deal to bring a character over to the Marvel 616 from that. But I'm not under the impression she had some huge following. It's not like they brought Spawn over, which I think would be a much bigger, more impressive deal. So I don't know. Maybe Marvel should concentrate on getting their current animated shows right before they start telling me that they're going to make another one for me to watch. So that's the first two stories of the day. The third story of the day, something I feel very strongly about, that was very interesting. I'm putting a link below in the video description to the article. But the New York Times had a fascinating article yesterday about a filmmakers exchange program with Iraq. I thought that was really fantastic. They brought over some young and old Iraqi filmmakers to the United States. It was all men because with Iraqi culture, you can't have unmarried women traveling, apparently, with men they aren't related to. So it was all male filmmakers, but it's a start. And what happened is they had an American person from the Hollywood industry, I forget the name, But, they don't really have any big names involved with this program. But still, they have people involved from Hollywood who have a good working career. And that's always impressive and important and should never be belittled. I'm just sorry I don't remember their names off the top of my head. But they had someone come to Iraq so that this group of filmmakers could get used to meeting an American that wasn't a soldier. And I thought it was fascinating that they said for a number of these Iraqi filmmakers, it was the first time they'd met an American not in uniform. And then after that kind of introductory period, they brought them over to Hollywood, where they said they got to see the beach for the first time, and they got to see one of them said they'd never seen a 35 millimeter camera. They said they got to see a movie in theaters for the first time. They'd never gotten to do that. They saw Man of Steel, which they didn't like. I'm sorry. But they also saw World War Z, which another interesting reaction was they said the young filmmakers liked it, but the older filmmakers didn't like it because they felt it had some propaganda aspects to it where America saved the world once again. I thought that was interesting. And I would say I hope that the Iraqi filmmakers use that as impetus to go, an incentive to go and make a film where Iraq or another country saves the world. Although I would say in World War Z's defense, I felt that film tries very hard to have a global feel to it where everyone contributes, which is one of the things I liked about it. I actually saw it for a second time this weekend because I like World War Z so much. So it's a fascinating article about them learning about storytelling. And also, they said that all the Iraqi filmmakers are going to make short films, and they had getting advice from people working in Hollywood. And they were all making them about children because they had been told that was their best bet for getting into a film festival the world over. So if you're trying to play the film festival game, know that there are some new filmmakers in Iraq trying to play the same game, and it's equally difficult and frustrating for everybody. And everybody's aware that there are tricks. So I thought that was great. I thought it was a great story. I thought it was wonderful. It's always great to see new voices in film, and as film becomes a more global market, a global industry, that's just... I really want to see more competitive films coming out of other countries that will play here. For instance, I saw Kon-Tiki, I loved it, and they're bringing over those filmmakers for Pirates 5. I really want to see a blending of the communities. All right, so those are the 3 stories of the day. Now I'm going to answer a question. This was from, it's kind of a film question. It's from Catherine Rose, who always writes a lot of comments. I notice your name all the time in the comments, so I wanted to answer your question, and someone else seconded. They said they also liked this question, and you wanted to know about my thoughts on Amanda Bynes. For those of you who, I think it would be hard not to have heard about this story at this point, but just a quick refresher. Amanda Bynes, child star of Nickelodeon and some fabulous movies, by the way, actually, in my opinion. Has really is having some problems. She has left her family. She lives by herself in New York City. She takes a lot of bizarre Twitter photos. She tweets a lot of bizarre comments. She, often wears a wig. She's like the worst aspects of Miley Cyrus and Rihanna, who, by the way, she fights with all the time on Twitter. And some people are wondering why. And she also was arrested for allegedly throwing a bong at out of the high-rise apartment she lives in when the police came to check on her. Then she accused the police of sexually harassing her. It's just a disaster. And some people have said, well, why doesn't she have psychiatric help? But the problem is that she apparently isn't crazy enough to be, committed against her will. And so her family, there's nothing that they can do about it because she's old enough to be responsible for herself. The only problem is that usually when this happens, sadly no one's aware of it, but when you have a celebrity like Amanda Bynes, everybody sees what's happening. So she's having a very public meltdown. And as Catherine Rose pointed out, the weird thing is that, they did a drug test apparently, and there's no drugs in her system, although she apparently was smoking marijuana. But the question is, what happened to Amanda Bynes? I'm not quite sure. I think that obviously nobody can know for sure because she won't submit herself to get help, and so no one can really get to the heart of the matter. I would say though that it's Hollywood is a very cruel business, and I think especially for child stars as they get older, I think that it's obvious from how consumed Amanda Bynes is about her appearance that maybe she's had some negative comments said about her, and I think that's really a shame because Amanda Bynes is incredibly talented. I was watching some clips from She's the Man the other day, an early role for Channing Tatum as well, and Amanda Bynes is just such a brilliant comedian, and right up there with Lucille Ball and stuff, really good. And so I feel it's sad that if in any way, some heartless comments from some stupid studio executive feeling, oh, Amanda Bynes isn't hot enough would, hurt her so deeply and cause her to have this problem because she's just obsessed with her appearance at this point and trying to be, quote unquote hot. One of the great things I always loved about Tyra Banks for America's Next Top Model. I don't watch it anymore. The show's not as good, but I used to really be a big fan. But she always pointed out that, there are a lot of different ways that someone can be considered beautiful. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder. And I really wish that Amanda Bynes had better support around her to soldier on, because she's just so talented. And also, she might actually have a mental illness problem. Who knows? So I feel very bad for her. I think, as I said, I really was a fan of her work, and hopefully someday she will be convinced to get the help that she needs. So that's today's morning movie news. So as I said, there will be no movie math today, but everything will return to normal. And also, getting ready for San Diego Comic-Con. I will be there for the entire convention covering it. So get ready for a San Diego Comic-Con preview later this week. All right, thanks for watching. Bye.